Welcome to the second Sunday in our, is it second? The second Sunday in our month of Sundays for Gay Pride. To be clear, the title of the sermon references Proverbs 16, chapter 16, verse 18, which states, "Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall." So over time, this has been condensed into "pride goeth before a fall." But to truly understand the meaning of this saying, you need to consider both parts of it. Pride can take many forms, but Proverbs here is referring to a haughty, arrogant pride, a belief in one's superiority that inevitably leads to a fall. When we discuss gay pride, or any collective pride, but particularly during Gay Pride Month, we aren't talking about arrogance. We're talking about being proud of who you are. That really should be the theme, and that's really what's important and what we can get out of this month of reflection and thought and celebration and observances of history. Now, I've watched Gay Pride for many years. When I started to write this, I realized it was 1980s, which was a long time ago when I first went to Gay Pride Parade in Boston. And I remember it was a one-day event. It was Gay Pride, it was one day, there was a parade, and it was a day of fun and celebration. It wasn't overly political or protest-oriented. It was about walking down the main street of Boston, Tremont Street, with friends, proudly proclaiming that we were gay. Not because being gay is an achievement, but because it's part of who we are, and there's no reason to hide it. And let me be clear, throughout this, when I use the term gay, I'm referring to men, women, LGBTQ, ABC, QRST, UV, everyone. So I'm using that as a very inclusive term. And certainly, I know sometimes people think of it as meaning just gay men, which I don't. It's not what it means here. But, so, Gay Pride, that celebration, which involved parading and singing and dancing and a lot of drinking, has taken on more weight now, and now it's become a month-long celebration. I'm not sure why it's a month-long celebration personally, but I'm not as politically involved as I once was. And I know there are important issues that still face social and political issues that face LGBTQ plus people, but I think we should remember the core essence of pride. Pride is celebrating who we are. This extended celebration aims to highlight the diversity within the LGBTQ plus community, which I wholeheartedly support. Because it's interesting, you have a world that's diverse, then you have a subset of that diverse world that's the world of gay people, men, women, boys and girls. But it's also diverse. And we have to be careful. It's important to recognize the diversity without slicing it so thinly that we have an island of one-person groups. So I think it's important to acknowledge them, but also to try and keep it as an inclusive celebration of all people for this time, no matter what their orientation, their issue is, no matter what they're struggling with or not struggling with. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, we find, "So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them." So we're all created in God's image, yet each of us is unique. This is not a paradox, it's not a conflict. This diversity reflects God's infinite creativity. God is infinitely diverse unto himself. So within communities of like-minded people, we find incredible diversity, which leads to or can lead to inclusive celebrations like Pride Month. Chelsea Community Church is a welcome and open community, which is wonderful. But our mission needs to extend beyond the walls of the church. Our month of Sundays for Gay Pride Month aims to spread this inclusive and accepting love to a broader audience. But we must be careful not to become so proud that we lose sight of our own biases and prejudices. We need to strive to be more loving and accepting every day in everything we do. Because building community is the only way that we'll ever find peace amongst people. When people feel accepted and included, that's where you find harmony. When people feel excluded, that's the beginning of the end. It's not always easy. I don't always do it. We all have our biases, our built-in prejudices that come from years of how we were grown, how we lived, and what we saw. But if we're aware of them, we can overcome them, and we can build a truly accepting community where people feel free to be who they are. Gay people have historically struggled to overcome societal prejudices. And Gay Pride celebrates overcoming some of these struggles, not all of them, to achieve happiness and acceptance. Again, it's that the way it plays out. So, shall we call it the mainstream? I mean, gay men and lesbians. Okay, so that was sort of the head point of the arrow. And those are the first barriers that fell. And then, not all of a sudden, but I guess suddenly being recognized, we have people with gender identity issues, transsexuals, transvestites, non-binary people, who now, following that wave of progress, want to be recognized for who they are. And that's our job. And it's an extraordinarily complex world, the world of gender identity. But is it really that important? I mean, does it really matter to you or me what a person chooses to wear or how they choose to express themselves, or if they don't want to be a binary man or a binary woman? So, okay, doesn't hurt, doesn't cost me anything. I mean, these things that people get hung up on, I think, are really, they're weird creations in our mind. When I went to Union Theological Seminary, which is so far left you can't find it on the map, I was amazed to find there were a lot of transsexuals and people in gender, if that's the right word, I guess it's still the right word, people at Union, many of whom you would never know. Some you would. But there was a surprisingly large number in a very small school. My personal physician for years, Stephen Boswell, founded Fenway Community Health Center in Boston, which grew to be a huge facility treating primarily gay men and women and transgender folks, and started out treating the elderly, but more so became focused on that, built a 10-story building. One day I asked Stephen, we were talking about this subject, and he said, well, how many people do you think we treat here at Fenway who are transgendered? And I said, I don't know, and a couple hundred? He said, about 15%. I was shocked. He said, no, it's a much more serious challenge than people realize. It's still been very hidden. It's really sort of one of the last areas in the LGBTQ world that's hidden, where people don't feel comfortable coming out. And that's what things like Pride Month can change. And it ought to be changed because there's no real reason why it shouldn't be. Thank you. Thank you, Lorraine. One of the things that we have to realize, and this is more speaking to the LGBTQ plus community than necessarily people here, but it applies to everyone. But as the gay community gains acceptance, we must remember our obligation to accept others. True equality means being inclusive of everyone, just as we sought acceptance. I remember now, 20 years ago, having discussions with what I thought of then as older men. They were my age, my God, amazing. But they were talking about the fact that women now came into the gay bars. And they were just not happy with that. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I don't want women in the gay bars. I said, sorry. You want equality? You get equality. You don't get selective equality. You don't get to say, well, here we want everybody to be equal, but over here we don't. But that's how it's easy to do that. These weren't bad people. They just were gay men of a generation that, slightly ahead of where I was, who weren't comfortable around women, so uncomfortable cruising in a sexualized atmosphere that bars tend to be, or were back then, before they were replaced by smartphones, so they were losing sight of the goal. The goal was equality, and you get equality, great, accept it. It's amazing how the struggles of minorities, and it's easy to see in the gay community because we have the gay marriage issue. Gay marriage was a classic example of a tipping point. It was unacceptable, unacceptable, unacceptable. Okay, it's fine. And most people who researched that, and I've always felt this, think that tipping point simply became when everybody knew somebody who was gay. It's hard to hold on to your prejudices when Uncle Harry is gay or Aunt Mildred. So when that suddenly happened, that's when the obstacle fell over. And it really did. If you look at it statistically, gay marriage went like that. Overnight, suddenly it was okay. So that was largely because people came out and because they let their friends and their family know who they were. And it turned out that gay people were not monsters, that lesbians were not terrible women. They were just who they were, and that became much easier. What we're charged to do by God is to love one another. Every time I speak, I bring this up because it's so important. And that includes loving and accepting people for who they are. Because when you accept someone for who they are, you've given them the greatest love possible. The best part of our own month-long celebration here might be the reflection after the Gay Pride Parade. Hopefully people can come and relax, meet neighbors, and expand and build community. Chelsea Community Church has always been about creating an open, accepting community. Community is our name. We can use gay pride as a beacon, but our inclusive spirit should be present all the time. By recognizing God in each of us and accepting everyone fully, we fulfill our divine charge to love one another. Amen.